Hi everyone, this video tutorial is for the Sunset Embroidery kit from Poppyseed Creative. If you haven't purchased one of the embroidery kits and you'd like to do so, I will put the link to my online store in the description below. These kits are perfect for beginners who want to learn how to embroider and need a helping hand. In this video, I'll show you everything that comes with the Sunset kit, the basic stitches you'll need, and I'll also be giving some tips and tricks throughout the video. So included in your kit is the 10cm embroidery hoop, some white calico material, all the thread you'll need to complete your project. On the back of the card, there is a needle and there's also the instruction booklet. So firstly, we're going to put the material into the hoop. To do so, we're unscrewing the hoop, placing the material in the center, and then popping that back over the top and screwing it down. Once your material is in your hoop, we're going to turn to the final page in our instruction booklet, flip the hoop over, place it over our design, and then getting a blunt pencil, we're going to go through and trace our design onto our fabric. Making sure when you do this, our design is nice and centered in our hoop. Once you're happy with your design, you're going to unscrew your hoop and flip the material over so that the design is now on the front. Again, making sure your design is centered in the hoop, and then we're going to put the top back on and screw that down. Before you tighten your hoop completely, we're going to go around and lightly pull the fabric through all the way around. This is just to make sure that our material is nice and tight, and then we're going to tighten the hoop. Just make sure as you're pulling it around that you're not warping your design. Now this embroidery hoop only has one stitch for the entire design, which is satin stitch. So for this case, we're going to start from the bottom and work our way up. So taking our needle out of our holder, we're going to start with the bottom color, which is this deep red color. Opening that up, and we're going to start with 30 centimeters of thread. I don't recommend cutting longer than 30 centimeters to start with, because the longer the thread is, the harder it's going to be for you to manage. So as you progress and you become a little bit more experienced with embroidery, then feel free to go up to 50 centimeters length. Now when you're threading your needle, I recommend dampening the end slightly, flattening it between your fingers, and then it should go through quite easily. Leaving a 3 to 4 inch tail at the bottom because we don't want that to unravel as we're sewing. Now, before we begin, we're going to get that original card that the needle came on. We're going to turn our hoop to the side, and what we're going to do is make sure we're doing this nice and straight, is we're actually going to trace some lines onto our embroidery design. The reason that we're doing this is so that when we're sewing, all of our lines are going to be nice and straight and we know where to start. You can actually add a couple more in there. The more lines you do, the more guides you'll have to work off, which will make it a bit easier. Obviously we're using a blunt pencil, so the lines are pretty faint and we don't want to see them through our design afterwards. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fill in this bottom section and we're going to use these lines we just made as templates. So what I'm going to do is come up at the edge closest to the hoop, pulling that through, leaving a tail on the back, again about 2-3 inches. Now for the ends of your thread, you can either tie a sturdy knot into the back and then pull it through and then the knot won't come through. However, I prefer to use this method because I've found that when I'm working, trying to pull it through and getting stuck in a knot can unravel a lot of your project. So I prefer to do it this way. Leave quite a long tail at the back, 2 or 3 inches will do, and then just hold that there as you're putting the rest of your thread down. Now we're going to line that up with that horizontal line that we marked earlier. See where we need to come down on. It's actually right at the end of that section, which is really handy. Putting that needle down, pulling through. Make sure when you're pulling it through as well that your thread isn't becoming twisted on top, because that's when it can look really uneven on the front of your design, is when that thread is twisted. Now, still holding on to that tail at the back, I'm going to come up just next to where we came up before, and then again going down just next to where we went down. We want to get as close to those original holes as possible. For doing satin stitch especially, I recommend trying to only leave one line of white thread in between each of these holes. If you do them too far spaced apart, you will start to see the white through your satin stitch, which we don't want that. We also don't want them to be so close together that they're overlapping each other. We just want them to be nice and neat next to each other. Again, coming up where we came up before, and then down just next to it, just filling in this whole section. Now I'm filling in this bottom section first, and then we'll start to work our way upwards. Now I've filled in that bottom section, and I've just about used all the rest of my thread. So I'm going to undo that needle. Now what I'm going to do is tie these two tails together just to secure them down. So what I'm doing is going once around like a normal knot, but then going once around again, tying that nice and tight, and then doing the same thing again. Once around, and then once around again. That makes sure that these threads will never come undone. Just make sure when you're tightening your thread at the back that you're not pulling it upwards or shifting the thread on the front too much, because you don't want to create drags in the fabric. And then you just cut those tails off. Now we're going to come up again closest to the hoop. The reason we come up closest to the hoop and not down is just because it's a good guide. It doesn't really matter which side you come up and down from for now. And then we're going to go down through that design. Again, making sure that our thread doesn't become twisted as we're working. We can give it a little bit of a shimmy to untangle if we need to. And then we'll continue to do this pattern for the rest of this section, making sure to use our guides so that all the thread we're putting down is nice and even. Now, pretending that we filled in this entire section, we're going to move to the next section up, which is this pink section on the side. Now we're going to do the same thing we did before when we were starting that red section. We're going to find the lowest down horizontal line, coming up closest to the hoop, leaving a tail, and then what we're going to do is following that horizontal line across, seeing which of these threads it lines up with, and then we're going to put the needle down in the same hole that's used for that red thread, making sure we're not going through the red thread, just the same hole. Pulling that through, making sure it's not twisted, and then exact same thing, coming up just next to where we came up originally, going back down in that red hole next to it. And then we're just going to continue this same pattern. The reason that we're coming down through the same hole as the red thread is we don't want to leave any white gaps in our design. Once you've filled in that section, we're going to find the next horizontal line and create our next guideline, which will be this bit over here. And then again, starting just next to it below, we're going to come down and then follow those guidelines. And we're going to fill in the rest of that section. Use this same technique to fill in all of the sections working upwards, so it'll be the next hill on the left next, then the sun, then the sky. Once you've finished filling in all of the sections, your design should look something like this. I've also cut around the hoop and left about a 2-inch piece of material all the way round. This is just so it's easier and more even when we put all that material to the back. So now we're going to flip our hoop and tie all of this down. To do this, we're going to get some spare thread from our kit. Now these pieces of thread actually are made up of 6 individual strands. So we're going to divide this in half, so we'll be working with one section of 3 strands. Now to back your hoop, I like to use a folding technique. So what you're going to do is pinch a bit of the fabric, lay it nice and flat there, and then going through the material, pulling through, and then just tying a double knot at the back to tie that first anchor into place. Next, we're going to go around clockwise and do the same thing, pinching that bit of material, laying it nice and flat, pulling through, up and over, again, pinching the material. We're going to do this all the way around our hoop. Once you've gone all the way around, we're going to use that first tail we made and use that to tie off our thread, and then just cutting away that excess thread. Once we've backed our hoop, that is the finished design. Thank you so much for joining me, everyone, and happy stitching!